So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our 9 a.m. Webinar series, where we're going to look at engagement with our curriculum and online learning specialist, Becky Gibney. She's excited to present to you today. Just a few reminders before we get started. The meeting is going to be recorded, so if you feel uncomfortable with that and having your face on there, you can turn your camera off. However, we appreciate it and encourage you to keep it on to help with the building of community and human interaction that between us as we work remotely. The presentation today will be, it'll be a presentation followed by a question and answer session. You are muted until the question and answer session, and at which point we will unmute you so that you can ask any questions that might have come up. You can also put them in the chat box and we will address them as they come up or at the end during the question and answer session. At the conclusion of the webinar, we'll put a link in the chat that will allow you to provide feedback for us to tell us how we're doing. It'll also give us a record and show that you were here if that is ever needed by your district or somebody else. So with that in mind, I think we're ready to get started. So I'm going to turn it over to Becky and take us away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Gibney, and I am the Curriculum and Online Learning Specialist at the IU. I'm really excited today to be talking to you about engagements. We have a bunch of different slides. I threw the slide deck into the presentation, into the chat. So if you want to open that up, because I do have some links in the notes. Hopefully you see the notes. If not, I'll fix that later. With some links there to some documents. So we're going to get started really quickly, because as an instructional coach, I think every district, every teacher talks about engagement differently, and they define engagement a little differently. So what I'd like you to do is go to, if you just want to go into Google and go to Answer Garden. And this will come up. This is a tool that I'm going to talk about a little bit later that you can use to interact with your students. And it's free and very simple to use. So once you're at Answer Garden, you're going to click on and I'm just showing you from a student perspective, the magnifying glass. And then it says type ID here. The ID number for us is 11, I'm gonna put it over here, 116, I don't remember it all, 9237. So if you type that in and click submit, I'll leave it up there for you guys. And then there's a question there. It says, how do you define engagement in one word? That's pretty hard, but how would you define engagement in one word? And then if you could do that, that would be great. And we'll have a little collective group definition here. I know, really early in the morning to think. But I'm not going to give too much time. If you need to do a little bit more than one word, that's okay too. So for me, oh, there we go. Perfect. I needed to refresh. Good. Active, participation, focus, enjoyment. And so you see, as this starts like accumulating, you know, I keep refreshing here, you get a word cloud. And the more people, it's like the Mentimeter, those of you that were on here when we did Menti, the more, like, so for example, more of you said active, that's why it's getting bigger. And I can actually hover over it and see how many people said, you know, the certain word. Now, if I'm teaching and in my classroom, and if you're have a bunch of kids on here, I could screenshot this as well and then send that out, just like you would do a word cloud in a class. but this automatically generates it. Participation is getting more. Obviously, we have a smaller group, so it's not going to have too much. So in order to create this, I'll show you really quickly. All you need to do is click this plus button up top, and you type your question. That's it. And then, so I could say, why is the sky blue? What is blue? I don't know. I'm just, okay. The ID number is just this number right there behind it. So when you go to embed it in your LMS or share it with your students or families or whatever, you could either hyperlink that in, or you could just use that code number. So that's all Answer Garden is, but I wanted to show you that. And we got a good little, what this group values in an engagement is participation and being active. So, and as you have questions that pop up, please feel free to shoot them in the chat. We'll get them then, or Scott and Aaron can answer them. So for engagement is defined in, there's 3 different types of engagement. There's behavioral engagement, cognitive engagement, and relational engagement. And if you were at my TPAC presentation, I feel like everyone's going to think I'm the queen of Venn diagrams, because we talked about the sweet spot. But the sweet spot is just that where they all 3 intersect. That's when you have total engagement. However, it's, realistically, you're not always going to have all 3 of those types of engagements. So when we define them, behavioral engagement is that student's effort, the persistence, participation, they're compliant. Right now, with this new style of teaching, well, it's not new, but with remote and distance teaching, for the most part, everyone is pretty compliant. They know what they need to do. It's new to them. They're excited. They are engaged. Eventually, we might see that people or students start to not be as engaged. So that's why having these different strategies that I'm about to show you and different websites and trying some new things is going to be really important to keep the students engaged. There's the cognitive engagement. So how are students monitoring? How are they aware of their own learning? Maybe some goal setting. The one-on-one, I think those one-on-one office hours are going to be really important for those of you that have it, or the one-on-one phone calls that you're making. And then the last one, the relational engagement. Okay, how do we build the community in this online learning, remote learning setting? When you have kids engaged in all 3 of these categories, that's where true learning and you're really being effective and efficient too with students. So that's where we try to strive in all 3 of those engagement areas. And again, why is this important? I really think more than ever now, you're trying to teach your students, how can you be lifelong learners? And how can they learn, just from home in everything they do? And so I'm going to give you a couple of different scenarios here. So 6 ways that you can engage your students. There's actually more than, nope, there's more than 6, 7 ways, I think. I added, I got excited then. So embrace the ed tech world. I know it is new for some people, but Gimkit, Kahoot, playing those games. Some of the webinars that we've also run, the screencasting, using the Edpuzzle, all of those things. Providing space for kids to be social. Your kids will engage. Sometimes it's having, for those of you in the primary, even secondary now, having those meetings, giving them the office hours, the time to come on to Zoom and just talk. They're missing that social interaction. The breakout rooms, the flip grids. It doesn't have to be high tech though, right? You can just open those office hours. Get them off their screens, even though this is all, online learning, this and that. Get them off their screens too. Have them do some STEM challenges, some scavenger hunts. We're going to talk about that in choice boards. Communicate, right? Have some conference calls, not just with students, but also the parents and the guardians. If, have them jump in on class. Maybe they do an awesome, maybe just their occupation. Maybe they can come on and be a guest on your Zoom call. You're going to have to think outside of the box a little bit here. My biggest one is always ask yourself, are my students being learners or are they just being consumers? And I know right now as we're transitioning, this is a real quick transition for educators. but we want to be careful that our students are not just consuming. And I have this on a later slide, but is it quality or quantity? And I know it can be hard when we're doing the remote learning and kids might not have internet access or anything like that, but it's not that we need to give our students more, but what we're giving them, what are they doing with it? How are they engaging in it? Sometimes less is more. And so are they being learners or are they being consumers? And sometimes our expectations, not that we're lowering expectations, but we're changing our expectations. Don't be afraid for you to try something new. We've been talking about, like, and Erin mentioned it yesterday on her webinar, don't go and try everything new, but you have to, dangle the carrot a little bit for our kiddos and try something new here and there. But keep a healthy balance and don't try everything out there. You'll overwhelm yourself and your students and parents. So our students right now are considered 21st century learners, and there are 4 components, and they're called the 4 C's, which if you've been in any of my sessions previously or at the IU, I talk about this a lot. Our students nowadays, they need to be able to communicate, collaborate, think critically, and be creative. And those 4 C's, we do not lose those 4 C's in remote learning and distance learning. Okay, they can still communicate, they can still collaborate, whether it's with you, with their parents, whoever. They can be creative and they can think critically. Number 1, we talked about Flipgrid. If you did not, if you weren't part of our webinar with Flipgrid, or you don't know what Flipgrid is, both Erin and I spoke about Flipgrid and the next one here, Seesaw. So I wanted to start with something a little bit familiar. If you did not, we did record it and put it in our online learning hub so you can watch that. And what I did for us for our presentation here is on the slides, I've linked in on my notes the webinar series and some resources to help you, because unfortunately I'm not going to have the time to go into each app again and explain it. So Seesaw and Flipgrid are great ways to get started with building some communication. They're both platforms that are great for communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking, depending on your tasks. If you're going to ask a low-level web's, depth of knowledge, it's going to be less critical thinking. Whereas if your questioning strategies and things like that, the pedagogies do not have to change. So I'm going to leave this at this kind of a view right now so you can see the different resources underneath. The other thing you can do to engage your students when you're on Zooms, or even if you're not, with your LMS platforms, is embed some polls, right? Do some interactive polling. They have Mentimeter, which we used before, and I have a resource in there. Poll Everywhere. The only downfall of Poll Everywhere is I believe right now there's a maximum of 25 live participants. So if you're doing a Zoom call and your class is over 25, not everyone will be able to get on. Okay, so just remember that. And these are all free as well. Answer Garden, which we did at the beginning, is free. And also I added there, you can poll with Zoom. So I will be honest with you and very upfront, I have never done it with Zoom. Scott, I'm not sure, have you done it with Zoom? No. You can do it. There's a resource there if interested. The other thing is embedding in these Zooms, Nearpod. We have Nearpod later this afternoon, and Pear Deck and different sources like that. So polling also, it will allow for your collaboration. You can gather, you can ask deeper questions based off of your responses. Everything we still do in the classroom. The other thing is scavenger hunts. Why not? Okay, say we do not have technology, right? Just give them an old school scavenger hunt, right? Here's a list. Go on a treasure hunt. Go on a nature hike. Walk around your neighborhood. Find 5 things, 5 examples of. I'm trying to think of, Nick, your science terms. The life cycle. I don't know. 5 things that are blooming. So do a little scavenger hunt, let them see, get them out of their house. Remember, that's non-screen time like we talked about. Some other apps that might help you. I'm not sure if you've heard of Goose Chase, but Goose Chase is an online scavenger hunt. And I gave you this link here. It will take you to the Educator platform. The Educator platform is free, However, it only allows for 5 teams at a time. So there are other ones, it's a little bit more expensive, but maybe that's something you take to your administrator if you would, if you think a bunch of your district, like your teachers or your district would like it, to maybe pay for, like, it's $50 for educator fee, and it allows for a lot more teams. But it is a live feed, and you can do, there's pictures and videos, and I'd be more than happy to help you with some of that. The other thing that you can do is, we talked about Flipgrid, is a new thing called what's called a flip hunt. So for example, and this would be free because Flipgrid's free, is you make a platform, you give them the scavenger hunt. So this would be if you have kids that do not have online learning and they're working offline, you have the traditional scavenger hunt. But for those that do have internet access, you just turn that then into a flip hunt. So on Flipgrid, then you would make each task a topic, and you give points awarded. Now, this is an example of a health and wellness flip hunt, but then you make it a little competition and you gamify it. Okay, our students love competitions, they love games. It's something a little different. They're learning without knowing they're learning. So that's something with scavenger hunts. It's always important, just like you did in the classroom, to give choice. Okay, and for us, Erin touched on it yesterday, but choice boards, okay? Doing that for assessment, even your assessments are gonna look different, right? So this allows for kids to express themselves. They can communicate, they can use creativity. It's a big creativity in my opinion. They can collaborate. Maybe they're doing this with a partner, distance-wise, right, not like beside them. And also depending on how deep your boards get, they start to think a little bit more creatively and critically. So I have 2 links here that will open up for you. And choice boards also open up to some more student ownership, which is what we talked about at the very beginning. Something with 21st century learning and the cognitive engagement. So here's a how to create a choice board. And I'm going to show you an example of one, I think here. Well, it'll take you to it, but here's one. So a tic-tac-toe board. So, and I have in those links too some free templates for you so that you can see how other people are doing it and you can add it. But they would start with number 5 and then they get to choose. This is also a great way for differentiation and to reach students and IEP goals. Okay, so you might specifically say, and this is even easier now because kids can't see what other people are doing until they share out. You might say, email specifically one kiddo and say, I need you to do 3 of the number 2s because they might be maybe a lower level, Bloom's or Webb's depth of knowledge. And then I want you to do 1 yellow. I did it in my classroom like a stoplight. So red, yellow, green. Green was everyone had to do, red was the enrichment. Okay, so you can think of it that way as well. There's different designs, the menus. Here's a different one, like you need to choose an appetizer, an entree, a dessert. You could do it tied with your content. For example, I taught Spanish, so maybe I say, you're going to travel the world. I need you to visit 5 different countries, and you try it that way. So different choice is really important. And so those resources there are for you. And the last 2 things, obviously, add some STEM into it. STEM is not just a silo. And that's something that we've been really talking about in our region, in our groups. But right now there's a lot of different activities out there that kids could do without just the simple things, in their household. And you're hitting at all 4 of these C's, absolutely. And all different kinds of content areas, cross-curricular. Right now, what I wanted to show you this, I think it's Flukes. It could be Flux. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But right now they're running these, and I think it's really cool. These, if there's internet at home, these online STEAM challenges. And so every day, this is nationwide, they open up a new challenge every day. And then the kiddos can submit it and they pick a winner and post them on Twitter. So, this is day 11 and they have different challenges. Now, obviously the kids need to have these resources at home. If they don't, and this is a national challenge, but if they don't, you can always provide them in take-home packets if your district's choosing to do sending things, or that's not, they just wouldn't have that option. NASA also has these 2 sites, K-4 and 5-8, with STEM challenges that you can be doing at home, or you can just, there's tons on Pinterest, right? And vet them and check them out. And the last thing I'm going to say is speak their language, right? This is more for secondary, but even elementary kids know these, right? Bitmojis. Make your own Bitmoji. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, right here, this is a Bitmoji, and I have linked it for you on how to create your Bitmoji. It's an app. These are certain things that I learned, as you're presenting, try to make it engaging, right? A presentation doesn't have to be just Google Slides, even though right now I added some Bitmojis and things now. But try some social media. Teach your kids, if your district allows it, speak with them, teach them how to do it, how to use social media in a positive way, right? I see a lot of teachers right now working with TikTok. There's some lines drawn there, but who knows? If you're using it educationally, talk to your administrators. But I used to do Snapchat stories. You can always make your own and then download it and then send it to your students. So try to think creatively, speak their language. I have here too, here's a meme. There's websites here on, it's actually Giphy.com, and you can create your own memes, and they have a bunch of GIFs there too that you can download and save, and I'd be happy to help you. And then, of course, there is a website. Everyone at the IU sort of laughs because I always make my own GIFs. But it's called And Then I Was Like, and I have it linked right here for creating your own. You can create your own GIF right there and send them to your kids, right? They can GIF that, meme that, things like that. So that is everything in a nutshell. And I know there's a lot, but I'm going to open up to questions, and I'm going to bring back to, what it all boils down to. Different ways to get them involved and just thinking outside the box. So at this time, I'm going to ask you if you have any questions, and Scott can unmute everyone. I see Nick asked here, can students respond with emojis? 100%, right? They could, you could pose a question, or do you mean in a site?
That was specific to Answer Garden. I didn't know, like I was just doing it from a laptop, so I didn't even have those choices, but iPads and stuff.
Yeah, I would imagine that they can. I'd have to double check actually. Let me see here. I have emojis on mine. Did it work? Yep, they can.
Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. Any other questions? I'm going to stop share so we can all see each other's faces, but that was a lot, I know. Any other, even if you don't have questions, any way that you guys have been engaging students and sharing with them that we can share for the good of the group? Awesome.
Okay. So thanks for everyone for coming out tonight. In the chat, I posted a few set of links. The first is our feedback form. The second is a link to our webinar website. And on the website, you'll find actually it's updated for our sessions for next week. Anybody who wants to come, we're doing Tuesday, Wednesday sessions next week. So they're up. I also encourage everybody to show up tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for a coffee and conversation, which is an informal time of sharing and talking about whatever might be going on in your lives right now. And then also there's a suggestion form for any topics that you're looking for that we could do in these webinar series. So with that in mind, those are the links. Please do the feedback form. It does give us feedback, and it also shows that you were here. Any comments from either Aaron or Becky before we go?
Yeah, really quickly, I was just typing this, but if anyone needs a listening ear or even how do you navigate through some of these websites, please email me. I thoroughly, those of you that know me, I really enjoy like trying to be creative and lesson planning. So if you need anything, email me and I'd be happy to help.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming out, and we hope to see you sessions later today, tomorrow for coffee, or next week.
See you guys. Scott, you want to stop the recording?